Hello, and welcome to Sacred Mindshift Circle. I'm your host, Dahlia Deborah Donalds, and I'm thrilled today to introduce Nicky Howard, an intuitive artist, creative guide, and energy worker whose work blends art, emotion, and spiritual insight into a transformative experience. Through her unique approach, she helps people reconnect with their true selves and release what's been holding them back. At the heart of her practice is a method she developed called intuitive expression, a fusion of paint, intuition, and energy work that invites you to access your subconscious through color, texture, and movement. Her approach is both gentle and powerful, rooted in the belief that we are not broken, but simply on a journey back to our authentic selves. Welcome, Nicky. How are you?
Hi, thank you so much, Dahlia, for inviting me on here. Yeah, really well.
Well, I've seen so many of your videos also on TikTok. You have a very big following, and I love the way you usually give a lot of feedback to the listeners who are on also on their spiritual awakening journey. That you talk about a variety of different topics. But before we get into those topics, tell me a little bit more about yourself. I do think we have some things in common because I'm in France, but I know that you just left France. But tell us a little bit about yourself, how you grew up or how you moved into this field.
So, yeah, I lived in France for 25 years. That was my childhood dream. And I do feel like I went back to France to kind of bring back my soul fragments. I just moved back to the UK in December and I actually feel completely whole now. Um, as for my energy work, I really think it went back to 2011 when I was drawn to Reiki. And at that point, I had no idea what Reiki was. I just received a spam email saying, bring Reiki into your business. And it was like I had been slapped across the face awake, that I knew I had to do this. And I just happened to find a German Reiki master in France who could do it in English for me. I speak fluent French, but I think in something like that, it's really good to do it in your own language. And that really started me on my whole journey of spiritual awakening. So it really goes back to then. For my creative work, my mother was always creative. I was always surrounded by, art projects and creative projects. And I think it was at the end of my marriage in 2010 that I really started painting more and more and more. And that just became an integral part of my life. So that there's really two paths that go through. One is the energy healing with Reiki and emotion code, and the other side is the creativity. And then eventually they both came together.
So basically, my understanding is also that you, before this, did you actually have any other spiritual experiences before Reiki? Did you grow up in a very
Nothing at all.
spiritual household?
No, I've completely gone like, 180 degrees because I actually trained in biochemistry. I was working in science labs, I was working in research labs, and it was kind of like show me what, I don't want, but it also gave me, I think, a complete understanding of how our bodies work. So yes, completely different. I knew I felt different. I didn't feel like the same as other people. I think, we all feel like this one on this awakening journey. And it's only when I look back, I realized why. And I never believed in religion. Religion just never sat with me. But apart from that, I had no idea about all the spiritual side. It was a whole other realm. So that awakening in 2011 with Reiki just yeah, completely opened me up to something I never even knew about.
Okay, so now explain to me because you speak about emotion code. I understand the idea that obviously our bodies are energetic centers, and the energies we have in our body can be shifted around to help us sometimes balance out certain emotions. Explain to me what exactly is emotion code.
So emotion code is releasing trapped emotions that get stuck in our energy field. So trapped emotions are emotions that haven't been expressed. So for example, if we've been silenced, if we've been through trauma, if we endlessly swallow those emotions, put them under the carpet, they actually then get stuck in our energy field. And if you imagine those emotions are on the outside of your energy field and slowly they come in and your body is giving you little whispers of like, hello, can you help me? Can you release me? And you just ignore it. No, going to keep going on. And eventually those emotions get into your body. And it's like they distort the energy field. Emotions, trapped emotions can be, you can almost imagine them like as small round balls, almost like as little bubbles of energy. And they become trapped. Once they become trapped in your energy field, you can get things like physical issues, such as obviously disease. You can get things like addictions, depression, all this type of thing. Anything basic that slows you down and stops you moving forward. And so with the emotion code, what I do is I connect to the person and I use something called muscle testing to work through a table of emotions to find out which emotions are trapped that is creating this issue that the client comes to me with. We then find out when that emotion was trapped. So that can be in this life, it can be a past life, parallel life, it can be inherited, it can be prior to birth, just after death, in another life, and then we release it. I release it for the client. And that is basically it. In a session, I release anywhere between 5 and 40, 50 emotions.
Now, most of the time, do you think that the clients even know that they have these blockages in their bodies? Are they aware of it most of the time, or is it something that like you also help them to guide them to show them that this is what it is?
Yes, I think people know when they often come to me, it's because that they're feeling stuck in some way. For example, stuck physically because they've got a pain somewhere, or they don't know where they're going, or they're in karmic cycles, but they don't know why this is happening. So what I'm doing in emotion code, as well as releasing emotions, it's also giving them clarity. We then begin to see the patterns in life of why this is happening, especially as occasionally I get, no, not occasionally, it's more and more now I get sent to past parallel lives. And I begin to see almost like an image, almost it's sometimes like a 360 degrees feeling of where that person was in this other life, where that, what I like to call like the karmic knot. So where it actually starts. And when we begin to understand that, we begin to see that the cycle that's been happening in this life, why things keep going round and round in circles, like, negative relationships or money issues that keep coming round and round, it's because the original problem hasn't been solved. So people are aware that, yeah, that there's something going on in their life, but they don't know quite what it is.
Explain to me a little bit more about the concept of the karmic cycles, just in case there are individuals who don't understand what that even is. Obviously, there is that concept that we've lived previous lives. Some of us have to learn certain lessons, or I don't know. Some people say that some of us are here to complete certain missions. I don't really know all of the details. Explain a little bit more about what that actually is, a karmic cycle.
So a karmic cycle, yeah, it's just like so imagine you go to school, okay, and you have a lesson to learn, you've got homework to do, but you don't do it, so you get asked to do it again. So it's kind of like, or I almost, because I think we talk as well about, this computer simulation thing. And sometimes I like to liken it to like a game of Mario. So you keep going around trying to get this apple and you can't get it. And you keep going around until eventually you get the thing. That's it. That's how I get the apple. And then you move on to the next level. So it's kind of like that we have this situation that happened in past parallel lives, because for me, we talk about past lives, but they're all happening at the same time. This situation is occurring. And if we haven't completely understood it, if we haven't dealt with that, then it's almost like your body just keeps bringing back similar situations. I kind of liken that to like a theatre play. It's the same play, different scenery. So you've got the same emotions going on, but it's not exactly the same situation. So, just an example, I had a client who came to me who was frightened of her journey to go into the airport. It just led it into immense control, absolute fear. She was kind of all right when she got on the plane, but it was like the fear of getting there. And it turned out that I kept being shown this pilot in another life. It was like a military pilot who had crashed his plane, And the passenger, who happened to be a diplomat, I got all this information coming through, had died. And in this other life, she was so um, ashamed because she was like a high level pilot and she thought she'd killed this person, but it hadn't. This person had died prior to the accident anyway. And so we kept on releasing emotions around this situation. We actually ended up getting a whole storyline about this person, about this pilot. And now her fear has gone. She can now travel, no problem at all. So it's something that happened in a past life that just wasn't, it was going around like in a loop.
And normally, like when you get these visions or downloads, how does it occur? Is it just like an image? Are you hearing, do you have any kind of connection? Like, do you have a guide? How are you receiving all of this input, this information in your own words?
So often what happens, I start releasing emotions and it always takes me back to a past parallel life. And then after a few emotions, I just get a flash of an image coming through. And it's often that moment I kind of doubt myself. And I think so many of us do. And I just kind of like put it, okay, it's there. And then I continue releasing the emotions. And that image tends to come back. And it really is an image. And then I tend to almost get the feelings, the emotions that are going on around this person, which is where I say it's almost like a 360 degrees. I see that this image, sometimes it's just an image, sometimes it's moving. I've actually had, I remember one time almost being given this image of a little girl, almost like in a medieval marketplace. And this little girl actually turned around to me. She went and stuck her tongue out at me. And it was like, oh my God. And she was really in my face. And it was almost like she was seeing me. So there's almost like some kind of like remote viewing that's going on. So I don't entirely understand. And this only really started happening during lockdown. That's the first time. Before then, I was just releasing emotions in this life and inherited emotions. But then it was lockdown that I started getting more and more and more coming through, like just literally these images. I don't get words. I just get kind of feelings and images.
And that's absolutely fascinating. And yeah, it could be that also, would you say that after your training, energetic training, that you started to open up a little bit more, like your
Mm,
psyche started to be.
yeah, I really think with emotion code, it's really strengthened my intuition and it's taught me to really trust that what comes through. Because sometimes something will come through and I just blurt it out and it but it means something so much for the client. It really gives them clarity.
And another question, because there was something that you spoke about before, and you said it's almost as if we're in a theater or like simulation of sort. What is your opinion of the nature of the reality that we live in?
It's such a big question. I think it screws my head up sometimes thinking about it because so many people say, yeah, yes, we're in like this simulation. And, you know, it's really interesting because when I think about emotion code, sometimes I'm thinking, you know, I think actually somebody said to me, and it was a girl off TikTok who said to me, Nikki, you're actually changing the code. I'm thinking, what? You know, there's actually a computer code going on. And it's, I mean, do we ever really know if this is a simulation or not a simulation? I really don't know. And sometimes I think we can just get so lost of going down rabbit holes and finding out is it simulation or not that it takes us away from looking at ourselves. Occasionally, you know, I've sat like in cafes, especially obviously in France, and just watched people and thinking, my goodness, he just feels like extras, you know, they feel like they're just not real people.
Yeah, I definitely can agree. After some of my experiences I've had, and it's interesting because I did hear you once or several times speak a lot about how your location influences not only your work, but also I think energetically you spoke about human design, right? Can
Mm.
you talk a little bit about that and then also talk about how you moving to France also influenced your art and your spirituality?
Yes.
Hmm.
So human design, I'm not an expert on it. It was a friend actually who introduced me to human design. So human design is almost like the blueprint of your energy. As regards, you know, things like astrology, obviously planetary base, it really goes into the type of person you are. Human design is more like literally the blueprint of how you navigate your own energy. And it's really helped me navigate my own life. For example, I am a generator. And in human design, there's so many different levels. It really gets very, very fine-tuned. But as a generator, I have my own energy. So it means that I can keep going. I almost like self-propel myself. Whereas my ex-partner was somebody called a projector who they don't have that energy. And so he used to get exhausted just by watching me. It's like, a steam train being tagged along to a TGV. And it really helped me to understand that we work at very, very different speeds. There's also things like I have something called non-emotional, and that means I actually feel emotions, and I can suddenly get this desire like to create something. Oh my God, yes, this emotional wave comes through, and then I start creating groups on Facebook, and they fail after 1 week. And thinking, why? And this is because for me in human design, this emotional wave, I need to wait for it to pass and just sit and wait for that feeling to come back and think, okay, do I really want to go with this? So it's really helped me just kind of like just to stand back and wait for things. So it really just helps you to really navigate and also to really align to your absolute truth. It really helps you to stand up, and the bits that you hide are actually in fact the bits that you can really bring out because it's really part of you. So it's really worth looking into your own human design and finding out so much more about it. And then the other half of your question was about me moving to France.
Well, yeah, because you spoke about how moving affected your artwork and the way, I mean, do you believe that, for example, in England you could have done the same kind of work that you got to do when you were in France? Do you think that energetically the I always feel that sometimes certain locations have their own dense energy and other locations are more lighter and they allow us to get more done. What do you think about it?
Yeah, well, I mean, I moved to France 2001. I was in my 30s. Prior to that, I always felt lost in the UK. I felt homesick, and I knew from an early age, I think it was about 11 or 12, I knew that France was my country. So for me, that kind of feels like I know that I've lived many lives in France. And so not being able to do the art in England, I think was more of the fact that because I didn't feel complete, I didn't feel whole, I had to take that journey to find out who I was. And even if, yes, I used to do some creativity in the UK, but it just never came alive. Whereas in France, it did, it gave me that space to. And in 2020, I was guided to go back to the UK just prior to lockdown. I received 3 or 4 signs from spirit, so you need to go back. I went back to the UK, and it was in the UK that I then connected with my now ex-partner who's still in France. He was in France, and then I moved back to France in 2021. And it was that moment that really birthed into Art of Expression. Actual fact, it was him that really found the name for me. For that, he really nailed it. And it was at that moment, I think our energies coming together allowed me, that's when Intuitive really exploded into something so much more. It really birthed at that moment. And I think that's because I was at that moment of, becoming complete.
You speak about where we are can influence our work. How did it influence your work as far as what you started to paint when you were in France? Can you give a little bit more of what kind of things,
Um,
how did you notice the difference in what you were painting, or did it feel different? Did it? Mhm.
no, because I think, I mean, looking back, um, yeah, well, interesting you say that. I've never actually thought about this actually, because yes, I did used to paint in England, and it was very regimented. It was very like in blocks, in squares. So that to me was very kind of like compartmentalized. Whereas in France, that really began to open up. And as I said, it was the end of my first marriage where I really began to paint. The actual layering of it and the freeing up of it came through because I fell upon an artist called Flora Bowley. And she paints, she brings yoga into her practice and energy. And then she also paints in layers. But I discovered that in France. I wasn't in the UK, and that's when I really started painting in layers, and that's when the whole process kind of took off.
Yeah, I always look at things that from that perspective because I really do feel a lot of people know already I am a native born New Yorker, but I arrived to Europe when I was like 23 and I was living in Barcelona like for 17 years and I've only now moved to France for a year. And it's interesting because I really do feel that certain ley lines, certain areas, your creativity
Mm,
takes off. All of a sudden, here in France, I've become very, very creative. And it's just interesting because I do notice that France
yeah.
has the reputation of bringing out artists. So I do feel that it has to do sometimes with the ley lines and the energy. I feel like there is a lot of creative feminine energy on this
Mm,
territory, which produces that. So I always question and I ask. Okay, the other thing I wanted to talk to you about, because you do also talk a lot about reality and timelines and shifts in timelines, right? Tell me a little bit more about, how we shift timelines through our thoughts, through our energy, in your opinion.
So for me, timelines, it's almost like endless corridors of possibilities. At any one moment, we have a whole choice. And through shifting timelines, it's almost like walking down a different corridor. And if you imagine a corridor of, endless negative thoughts or, like mindset or that type of thing, you're walking down one corridor. To be able to shift timelines, you need to shift that thinking and, release that weight, release those emotions to take you on to a whole new timeline. That's one way of looking at it. As I said, I was guided to move back to the UK just before lockdown. And that really felt like a shift in timelines for me because just to give it of how it felt, I came out of work. I'd been teaching in France, came out of work at 5:30, got in my car, and it was a new car, and it showed a 4:30. Now, normally you just think, stupid clock, what's going on with this clock? I had lost all sense of time. I was like, I had to work through my day. I just sat there thinking, where am I? What had I been doing? And I could not remember what I'd done. I really had to go back and think, okay, I went to work at 9. I taught a group. If I was teaching a group, I had to finish at 5. It can't be 4:30. It has to be 5:30. And it's that kind of feeling when I think it's beyond our control, because I think there's two ways. We either shift timelines by shifting our mindset, or something else is happening. And at that instant, it really felt like I switched timelines. And then there was other signs as well that kind of like confirmed that moment. That's kind of how I see it.
Okay. Yeah, no, strangely, I think, no, well, not strangely, I think a lot of things are going on, especially now energetically, although you say that this was a couple of years back when this occurred.
This occurred in 2020. Yeah.
Yeah. And now we're in 2026. So, interesting enough, I've had a lot of situations similar to that where, especially when it comes to time or the sensation, sometimes that when you go to sleep, and even for me, I feel like, there's some days it feels like time is moving very slow or time is going super fast. And it just seems sometimes like we're always jumping or switching or
Yes.
changing timelines. Um,
Yeah. We're not fixed.
yeah. So do you think for 2026, this year, where do you see us moving as a collective, as everyone is beginning to realize
Wake
like,
up.
oh wow, this is not everything, a lot of things have been happening in the media
Mm,
news where if, the more, at least my algorithm is completely in my own world now. So
yeah.
all of the things I'm seeing are related to everyone awakening because that is so I've seen a lot of people waking up, and you have a group of people that kind of already knew about a lot of these things happening around us, and then you have people who are just starting to realize what's going on in this world. Where do you see us moving as far as us changing timelines? Because there's a 3D mentality, there's a 5D mentality. What do you see us doing right now?
Massive question because obviously we're in a 1 year. So for those who don't know, in numerology, there are 9 years in a cycle, and last year was a 9 year where we're finishing all the karmic cycles. It's the last one. This year is a year one, year of the horse, and that is a whole new cycle coming in and a whole new beginnings. And with the fire horse as well, it's like all the planets going on. It's almost like we're in a time that's just never existed before, a cycle that's never really existed. And it's really interesting because I just put a quick post up on Facebook this morning about this, how, giving thanks to those who've woken up, like, you and me, Dahlia, that we've already carried that weight. And it's like the first wave, we're waking up so that when the second lot wake up, we can say it's okay, it's okay. It's all just part of the journey. And this 3D, 5D, you know, I don't think we're ever fixed just in 5D. We're always flipping in and out of these. And that is just obviously with the thought process that go on, we find ourselves going back into 3D and back into 5. Where are we going? I mean, who knows where we're going, how this is going to look. But I was told, I get given these phrases. And at the beginning of lockdown, I was given, they will fall at the last hurdle, which means to me that everything that they, the elite, whatever you want to call them, are trying to bring in is backfiring. So that it means that they're trying to go as far as they can, but they're just not getting there. Something always puts the spoke in the wheels. And so on the other side, everything, for me, that backfiring is that it's actually waking people up. It's like lockdown. They meant to do one thing, but it actually woke up a whole mass. So how that's going to look, and she said that the same with me, all like my TikTok videos, everything is just now I'm on my timeline. I haven't got a clue what's going on. I mean, they're obviously talking about the Epstein files. I think know about that. Don't need to worry about it. And I think, yeah, that there could be a lot of people waking up and it's a shock. We were kind of like woken up kind of gently, and other people literally being slapped awake in the middle of their sleep. And I think that's where they like, oh my God, what is going on in this world? And I think that's where we're going to be helping those, catching those to say, no, it's good.
Yeah, definitely. I've heard of that concept as you said, like we are meant to help out the ones that are going to come after us and begin to also realize what's going on. Um, Now, and part of your work as well, because you speak a lot about letting go of these repressed feelings, these emotions, and you talk about inner authority and sovereignty. So, what does that really mean in terms of us lifting our vibration, lifting our frequency? How can we do that, and how can we remain sovereign despite all of the different things around us that are trying to keep us down?
So what comes to mind as you're saying that is almost like this inner, almost sort of like as an inner tube. Um, that is your sovereign being. That is your aligned, authentic person. And this, raising a vibration, that inner part, it already has a very high vibration. And it's the outside that's basically pulling that down. And that could be obviously things on the news, what they're trying to do, and the trapped emotions that is all like weight, almost like pulling down almost like a hot air balloon, trying to anchor it down on earth. And so to be sovereign, to me, what I feel when I speak about that is aligning to your absolute inner truth. This is my truth. And that's not a head-baked truth. You're speaking lies. I'm true. It's a deep inner truth that almost comes from, how do you put it? Like your deep inner soul, the one you really came here at birth, that is your absolute truth. And then everything that you learn from society or the emotions that become trapped in your energy field, that the negative beliefs, social programming, all those are anchoring you back down or pulling you away from that center core. And so, yes, I mean, all the work that I do is releasing all of that to bring you back to that. And it's not something that you go and find. It's not something that you're trying to do. It's already there. You're just releasing it so that you can see it within, if that makes sense.
Yes, of course. So it's not thing that you have to go looking outside of yourself for you. What you're doing is just
No,
helping them see it within. And
yeah.
what would be your message to all of those individuals that want to start from somewhere, want to begin to uh, on at least just on a daily basis have a kind of plan of how they should try every day to release those kinds of emotions and start their day off well.
I think one of the easier practices to really shift that, and that's also about shifting timelines as well, and the vibration, is gratitude. Just a daily practice, and that can be done. I mean, we have this saying, write, 5 things in your gratitude journal, but it's so much more than that. Just an example of how gratitude can work. I was going through a really difficult time in my life. I went to massive debt. I went to work, my car broke down, and I was in massive panic. I was angry, the fury, the worry over it. And I thought, right, I've got to go to the bus. Every step I took to that bus stop, I decided to say a word of gratitude and really feel it. By the time I got to that bus stop, it was only 5 or 10 minutes away. I was on a high. It completely shifted my whole mindset. And gratitude, when you're doing it, it's really feeling it. It's not just writing it down, it's feeling it within and really giving absolute thanks for that. And gratitude just basically helps you focus on the good, on what's really happening, and it magnifies that, and it keeps you focused on a new timeline, on somewhere different to go. And I think if that's the only thing you can do, because of especially with people going through everything that's going on at the moment, if there's one thing you can do to shift that, is gratitude.
Okay, well, thank you so much, Nikki, for giving us that suggestion. And I've heard a lot of people also recommend this as well.
Mm.
So, if anyone wants any more information about Nikki and the courses that she does, I will leave the links and everything in the description. And please, everyone, make sure to subscribe to Sacred Mind Shift Circle and sacredmindshift.com so you never miss another important event or podcast. And thank you so much, Nikki.
Thank you too. Thank you so much for inviting me, Dahlia. Thank you.